So we're just going live on YouTube. And I started recording. So we are live and recording.
All right, and it is 7 p.m. So we can call to order. We do have a couple of changes to the agenda. Unfortunately, MLA Semler has had to reschedule due to technical issues. So she's going to try to join us in September for one of our meetings. So 4.2 can be removed. And then the addition of 8.6, which is the Chief Jim Couey Park redevelopment presentation from Director Chalice and Development Officer Joseph. I do not believe there are any other changes unless council has any they'd like to make. I don't see any hands up there. Councillor Wainman has also just joined. So just for everyone's information, Councillor Wood and Councillor McDonald will not be attending this evening. Councillor Miro, I believe, will be calling in, but we'll see that. So if that's all good for the agenda, then we can move on to declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest. Are there any this evening? I'm seeing none. All right. Delegations, presentations, or petitions. We do have Constables Howlett and Leduc on the line to make their RCMP report presentation. So I will hand over to them and we can listen to what they have to say this evening. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Corporal Paul Howlett. I'm going to be the acting detachment commander for the next foreseeable future. I hope everybody got the July report. I can go through it quickly here. If you have any questions at the end, I'll definitely take any kind of questions or anything anybody has. For the road safety priority, we had 15 impaired driving incidents investigated. As a result of that, we had 4 drivers facing impaired driving charges, and they'll be facing the court in the future. A lot of these investigations, I probably might inquire as why we're having 15 impaired investigations and only 4 charges. A lot of times these are unsubstantiated calls, is what we refer to them as. Basically, we've stopped a person, checked them. They obviously haven't reached over the limit, so therefore there would be no impaired driving charges as per the criminal code. There could still be provincial applications such as driving suspensions and that stuff, but like I said, they wouldn't be facing charges as per the criminal code. A lot of times, a lot of them we deal with are, like I said, unsubstantiated, meaning also that they could have not had any alcohol in their systems at all, based on our initial investigation. 2 is domestic violence. We've investigated, total for the month was 30 assaults. 5 of those were of a domestic nature. The charges on these 5 domestic violence calls are 4 files going to court, 2 being male suspects and 2 being female suspects. Out of those 4, all 4 of them will be facing criminal code charges in relation to those domestic violence incidents. Number 3 is our youth. We basically had limited direct contact with the youth this month, although we are doing in our regular patrols, always talking to the youth, keeping in mind the COVID regulations and the the ability to make sure that everybody stays safe. Notable occurrences for the month, we had 2 production orders, 2 search warrants, and 1 forfeiture order. The production orders are typically when we're doing a Controlled Drugs and Substance Act investigation or a proceeds of crime investigation. Production orders typically are for people's cell phones, bank accounts, things along those natures. So typically what we'll do is production orders will be as a result of an investigation, which would lead to either charges or a search warrant for further evidence. The 2 search warrants were both for CDSA. for Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. Again, looking at probably future charges as a result of those search warrants. And one forfeiture order was as a result of the previous search warrants. Basically, we're going to try and dispose of the drugs that we seized. So we need a forfeiture order to do that. COVID-19 related calls, we took 2 calls for self-isolation checks. So these are people who are self-isolating within the community, but not in the isolation center. So they're isolating at home. Basically, they ask us when people return to go and check on the person, make sure they're abiding by their self-isolation rules. So we've done 2 of those checks this month. We've took 4 calls to the isolation center itself, mostly for assisting with the Department of Health with regards to people not following the rules within the center. We've also done 2 calls for direct assistance to the Department of Health for people failing to cooperate with the public health officials. So that one of those along the lines of somebody failing to cooperate at the airport, and another one was with regards to somebody not following the self-isolation rules in the center, basically leaving the center without permission. We figured that with the phase 3, I think whenever they decide to go to phase 3 of the COVID rules, we'll see some decline in those calls, hopefully. We attended the Canada Day celebration. Staff Sergeant Louis Jean-Nieve and Constable Tyler Smith attended. I'm sure you might have seen the pictures on Facebook. They had their full personal protective equipment on, but we were happy to get somebody out there for that. Really no new issues with regards to any particular concerns in the community as at this point as far as a policing aspect. But like I said, if you guys want to give me some feedback, I will definitely like to hear it. On the page 4, just basically the call volume and along the lines, we're not too far off of what we were last year at this time. Total calls for service at 462 as of this year. Last year it was 441. So not too far off. Total prisoners, we're all actually exactly right on where we were last year for the total prisoners to this point in July. Seizures of alcohol, we had 7 this month, and last year they only had a total of 11 all year. So we're up in our alcohol seizures. That's pretty much it. I think Constable Leduc has some stuff she wanted to bring up as well.
Just a quick update, because I think 2 meetings ago there was a mention about the youth that started that fire in the abandoned apartment buildings. So I have sent a letter out that was written by one of the youths to the mayor, I believe, got it. The fire chief got it as well, and it was asked to be disseminated amongst people in the town council as well as the firefighters. I believe the paramedics also got it, and it was given to the police as well. So on that end, that youth is also creating a program. We worked with the youth and their parents for them to come up with a program that they were excited about doing. So they're using their animation skills to come up with a fire safety program and little cartoon that we're going to try and get into the schools this year to teach kids about fire safety. So there's an update for you. Once that is complete, though, that youth will be done his diversion, and I feel it was very successful, and he has learned a lot from what he did, and he's very sorry. And the other 2 youths involved, who are also younger, are very sorry as well. That's all from us, unless you have some questions for us.
Great, thank you very much. I did have a question just following up from something that happened earlier this month. Do we know if the Crime Stoppers numbers are all back up and running now? My understanding is that
I believe so. We have one of our constables is the liaison officer, and he's been getting regular tips that we technically follow through on with investigations. So as far as I'm aware, it is up and running.
Okay, thank you. Were there any questions from council this evening? Seeing none, hearing none here on the phone. All right.
I'd just like to say, like I said, I'll be acting for the next few months. Feel free to give me a call anytime. Again, it's Paul Howlett. I'm very open to any suggestions, any comments, any concerns. Absolutely, 100%. like I said, I'm kind of new to this position, but I'm learning, and any input would be greatly received.
Thank you very much. And you guys are free to go if you'd like to, or you can hang out and listen to the meeting. But
Thanks.
all right. So we have had to eliminate item 4.2 from this evening's agenda. Hopefully MLA Semler will be able to meet us later in September, is when she anticipates to be able to attend. So we have public question period. I've not received anything for this item. I will just confirm with SAO Hood or acting SAO Hammond that we don't have anything here tonight.
I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard anything either.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to adoption of the minutes. 6.1, the minutes of the July 13th and 15, 2020 council meeting. Are there any questions or comments on these minutes? I'm seeing none and hearing none here on the phone. On to 6.2, the minutes of the July 20th, 2020 Public Works Committee meeting minutes. Any questions or comments on these minutes? Again, seeing and hearing none. On 2 minutes of the July 30th, 2020 council meeting. Questions or comments on these minutes? And seeing and hearing none again, thank you. With that, we can move on to 7.1, the action items list. There are a couple of updates here. For starters, item number 1, we will have a presentation this evening under 8.6 about the current work that's going to be happening in Chief Jim Couey Park. The strategic priorities chart update is also on tonight's agenda. Just wondering, number 5, the gym passes, if we had an update available on that item. The required action would be the ability to issue passes on a per use rather than per term basis. I'm not sure, SAO Hood or Director Selmair, if you have anything to add there.
I don't have that at the moment. I think we're still working on it.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then the signage at the dock promoting wearing of PFDs. I know that the loaner station is up and running through the MSC instead of at the dock because of the COVID restrictions. Do we have the signage up encouraging folks to use PFDs down at the boat launch? I guess Director Campbell might take that one. If you,
Grant here. I'm not too sure. I'll be honest. I had asked them to do something, but I'm not 100% sure if it's being done yet.
Sorry, I had to figure out how to be able to unmute myself, but I haven't seen any thing done. I will check and let you know tomorrow or on
okay, great.
Wednesday.
For Wednesday would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
And then item number 11, which is the Peggy Curtis Fields. I reached out last week to infrastructure to see where we were on this. They have reached back to give us the name of the project officer and acknowledge that they will be in touch with further updates. All they could offer right now that they were in the process of getting the tender together to put out. But as we receive updates, I'll make sure to share them with council on that item. Were there any other questions on the action items list? Seeing none, hearing none here. All right. With that, we'll move on to the NWT Shop Local Day Proclamation. This did go out to council by email just to make sure that we had consensus on moving forward with it. So the proclamation itself, I believe we will make on Wednesday night. Were there any questions or comments on the item? Seeing none. All right, thank you. On to item 8.2, the strategic priorities chart. This item is, administration did a recent update in June to make sure that they were on the right path with what council's goals were or are. There are a couple of things that I believe we could update that won't necessarily affect the work that administration is currently still working on. My suggestion would be item number 1, the recreation facility utilization inventory, to be removed, as we'll be receiving that presentation this evening. And keeping my suggestion would be to keep the other 5 in the top as they are. They are, unless someone fervently disagrees, they are the top priorities, I believe, of council at this time. But I did send in an email some date updates that we could add, just because the previous updates are mostly pre-COVID, and a lot of the work, of course, didn't meet those dates. So basically what I did was just go through the administration section and make sure that the council dates align with those. And so if you look at item number 2, the Brainot Road Design Cost Estimate, I moved to September 2020. Parks and Trails Plan, December. Utilidor, SCADA, and funding. Understanding that we are moving ahead with the project, but I think we should leave it on until completion. So I had October 2020. Operational review and HR manual is anticipated to be December. And the derelict buildings, this item's currently on the bylaw review list, so I think that maybe November would be an achievable date for those. I will, of course, entertain any conversation from council. This is your document, so please, I open the floor to you. If anyone has, Councillor Barlock?
Yeah, no, thank you, Your Worship. I think the suggestion to leave the other 5 on after taking off the inventory review makes sense. You usually want to have around 5 anyway, and the dates suggested also make sense. So I'm supportive of what you put forward.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from council? Not seeing any hands raised or any voices on the phone, so I will leave this for Wednesday and we can make those changes on Wednesday night. With that, we can move to 8.3, the Town of Inuvik application for community recreation and sport contribution funding. This is an annual application that we do complete to MACA. I think if you read the background document, it's actually quite descriptive of what changes had to happen because of COVID, and then also what we're kind of looking at going forward. So I will entertain any questions or comments from council at this time on this document. And I'm seeing none, thumbs up. All right, so we will move forward on Wednesday evening. Next up is the request for reduction of tipping fees. This is an item up for council decision. We have received a letter from the Mackenzie Delta Hotel Group requesting a reduction in fees for the portion of the Eskimo Inn that they plan to tear down. There are 4 options presented in the recommendation. These are to deny the request and current tipping fees would apply, to approve a discount percentage with the condition that capping of the debris would be the responsibility of the hotel group, or approve a discount percentage with condition that capping of the debris would be an extra charge and be done by the current solid waste site contractor. So I will hand this over to Director Campbell to give an explanation to council about what we're looking at. Rick, take it away. You've just muted yourself if you were, oh, there you go.
Actually, I'm thinking that Grant will want to speak to this, not me.
Okay,
Sorry.
no problem. So SAO Hood.
So the request came in, obviously we had the previous item that had come before council on a reduction. And as I noted in the briefing note there, the reduction was given, but there was also the capping was a responsibility and the cost to the person of the contractor that was doing the bringing in the debris from out of town. This is an in-town. I realized the council had a big discussion over this. I think council from an administration point of view, when you have larger projects like this, sometimes one of the factors we have to take into consideration is the way our fees are set up. They're based on a truckload, and there is the potential then now of somebody trying, and not saying it would happen, but somebody trying to put in bigger truck loads and overloading the trucks, and that just to try and reduce. Whereas if we give a either a flat fee or, and again, we don't know how much debris there's going to be. That would be a question that maybe should have been answered by or asked by myself before this, but it certainly isn't going to be, I don't see it being real big. Now there is some talk that while the old Mackenzie Hotel did not go to the solid waste site and things like that, that was done prior to our having any bylaws disallowing stuff like that. Now we have bylaws that says you can't do it. So that, I just want to point that out as well. For an administration point of view, obviously we want to, given the circumstances this year, and also of trying to clean up, one of the items in there is derelict buildings and things like that. Maybe sometimes these are options we have to look at just to help clean up an area of town and that we've got. I wouldn't say it would be a large discount because we are talking in-house fees or in-town fees, which are significantly less. And so my recommendation, I would say, is that, but they would have to be some conditions regarding the capping as to whether it's an extra charge because of the discount. Now, somebody could say, well, it could end up costing them more, but again, that's a question for council. If they want to go with and just say, give a 10% discount, that's fine as well. Yeah, that's about all I have.
Thank you, SAO Hood. Are there any questions from council? Anticipate there will be some. Councillor Barlick.
Yeah, I guess the big question, which Grant acknowledged is not answered yet, is the number of loads anticipated from the project. And they are looking at doing this over 2 years from the letter that they said. Oh, sorry, my lights went out. So are we going to look at this on a year-by-year basis as one thing we need to consider, or are we going to look at it as a project as a whole, even though it's going to straddle 2 different years? And again, it's sort of an economy of scales question. How many loads are we talking about? And obviously, if there's a larger amount of loads, then you may want to consider a slightly larger discount. But yeah, that's a key question. I wonder if we might be able to have that answered by Wednesday.
I mean, we can certainly reach out. I think Director Campbell, would you be able to find that answer for Wednesday evening?
I can talk to the guys at the hotel group and ask them, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments from council?
It's Alana here.
Go ahead,
Are we
Alana.
talking about removing, just the back section of the building, not the front that faces Mackenzie Road?
In the letter, they state that it would be the back section facing to Untitled Place this year. And then it mentions that the remainder would be within the next year. Yeah. So
It certainly would make it look nicer downtown.
Yeah, and that gets to my point again. Are we going to consider this as a project as a whole or each year individually type of thing? Something we need to talk about as a council and make sure that we're on the same page as how we want to consider this.
maybe a second request then to Director Campbell would be to find out not only how many loads they anticipate for this portion, but then how many loads they anticipate for the secondary portion of their project, just so that council has an overlooking view of the entire thing.
I will find that out for you.
Great, thank you. So as we stand right now, are there any further questions or comments from council?
Yeah, I have a bit of a question.
Go ahead, Councillor McBride.
Terry, when we did the last thing where we brought solid waste in, the Director Campbell had basically advised us that if really didn't impact solid waste dump at all because it actually helped to expand the solid waste dump. So my concern is, what is the impact of these loads coming into the solid waste dump? Will it use up a lot of acreage, or will it not have a lot of impact?
Thank you. Director Campbell?
Well, any amount of material we bring in is going to have an impact on the longevity of the lifespan of the solid waste facility, but we've got such a large area out there and we can go up higher. So I overall, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the lifespan of the solid waste site, because we've got lots of room there.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, can we just get a reminder too, what's the tipping fee structure we're looking at here? Because this is, in, as you said, in town versus previous one, which is out of town, versus what was done with the Mackenzie a number of years ago. So what are we talking about with respect to the tipping structure for this?
So as it's listed in our bylaw, small loads, which are a 1/2 ton to a 1 ton, is $35. Medium load, which is 1 ton, and pickup and trailer combos is $65. And large loads, a dump truck and any straight truck combination is $125. Or extra large loads, which would be an end dump and any tractor trailer combination, would be $325. So I guess, yeah, the load size then would depend again on, it's anywhere from $35, which I don't think would be that low, but up to $325.
Yeah, I'm sure we're dealing with the higher end on this one. Okay, I'd be interested to hear from other counselors about this whole 1 year versus 2 year thing. I would just say I would consider this as a project as a whole. I think it is definitely something beneficial towards cleaning up downtown and maybe a bit of rejuvenation at some point. So, but that's where I would approach it, looking at it as a whole project.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to add anything? Well, Councillor Wainman, are you talking to us? You're muted. Try #6 on your phone. No?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, as far as I know, they are talking the other day about doing it all at once now instead of just the half. They're talking about doing the rest in September of tearing down the building.
Okay, that's information that Director Campbell can then confirm for us when he talks to the hotel group this week. Councillor Selecki?
I was just going to say that anything we can do to encourage them to get that building taken care of, I support. And like Councillor Barlick said, if it means giving them a 2 year, the entire project, so they don't have to come back to us, knowing that we support that this gets out of here is probably a good deal. But we don't want our contractor, the dump, to also have more contractors coming in, them not doing the capping. So it might be worthwhile looking at both sides, them doing some of the work with the capping on the end, but still offering a discount to the Mackenzie group just to get this taken care of.
Sorry, go ahead, Alana.
So depending on which route we take, will this impact the fee that the solid waste facility operator receives?
Left Director Campbell.
I am not sure. We never discussed that part, so I would assume if we give a reduction and he's not going to be doing the capping, it's not going to cost him as much. But if we give a discount and still expect him to do the capping, then yes, it is going to impact the amount of money that he's going to get.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's very important that the facility operator doesn't lose out on income.
Great, thank you, Councillor Miro. Clearly, there's going to be more discussion on Wednesday when we have a better idea of what numbers we're looking at. But if there's anything else right now, I'm happy to hear it.
I've got a
Oh,
question.
just 1 second. We'll go SAO Hood and then Councillor McBride.
I hadn't put it in one of any of the options there, but one of the options that you can do is give a, for example, option 2 is just give a straight discount. Is you could say it's a discount of X%, but the amount that is given, you reduce the town amount, but then the solid waste site contractor would get an increased amount as well, kind of a thing. So if, let's say it's $350, normally they would get what, 175. Now you could do it that we give them a 10% discount or whatever it is, down to maybe $300, but we still give the contractor the 175. It's just the town portion is reduced. That is another option that could be given as well.
Thank you, SAO Hood. Let me say this right. Acting Deputy Mayor or Assistant Deputy Mayor McBride, please go ahead.
Hi. Has it been discussed with the contractor?
SAO Hood?
No.
It has not.
And is this something we should do to get his buy-in? Because that was one of the issues previously, that he wasn't sure what was happening and there was some difficulty with that.
Thank you. Councillor Barlock?
Yeah, no, I would just note back in our discussion the last time we did this, that it's noted, I think, right in the contract with that the fee structure may change sort of without notice, if I remember correctly. So there is a clause in the contract with the operator that the fee structure may change from time to time. But if we do it where we offset the town to take the hit and the contractor still maintains the regular fees, then really there's no impact on his business. So there shouldn't be any concern. And I would definitely agree. I think like the last time, the capping aspect, I think we should have the contract, the hotel group in this case responsible for covering that cost. Whether they want to work with the landfill operator or some other way, I guess that's the thing. But either the cost to do the capping by the landfill operator is covered, or there is no cost because they hire someone else to do it, type of thing. So that shouldn't impact them either way either.
Director Campbell, did you have anything to add there?
Not really. I agree with what Steve is saying. If he's not incurring any cost, then he's not really losing anything, eh? So, but I mean, I will ask the hotel group when I ask them these questions tomorrow if they're willing to do the capping or not, is one of the things that I have listed down on my list of things to ask them. So I will find out.
Okay. Thank you. So if there is nothing further at this time, we can move on. I don't see any hands raised. So we will come back to this item on Wednesday with some more information and I'm sure some more discussion. So we'll move on to 8.5, the Recreation Facility Utilization Inventory Report. And I will hand this over to Director Salmir to give her presentation. I'm not sure if there's going to be a screen share portion, but SAO Hood, maybe you can speak to that. And then hand it over to Lise.
So I'll just make a full screen here, but I hope people can see it now. Can people see this? See it?
Yes.
Stay registered enough.
Are you going to scroll it, Grant, or
Yeah,
I
just
don't know
tell me
how this
when.
works?
Pardon?
Oops, sorry, hang on. Just let me know when to scroll it and I'll hit next page.
Okay, I apologize right up front for not numbering the pages. I noticed it when I was going over again this afternoon after I'd already sent it out. Okay, just to start, if you just want to flip the page, the next page. Now, I don't know if council has had a full chance to read through it, but certainly if you have a chance over the next few days and you have any other questions on Wednesday, we can address them then as well. So basically, the complex itself is the events that we have or the use that we have at the facility is dependent on the cycle of events and activities within the community. Sometimes the events that we have in the community are all held at the same time. So then our use at the facility kind of declines because people don't, it's difficult when you have same events on same weekends or same evenings for people to be able to attend stuff that they want to attend more than one activity. So we have a lot of times our uses coincide opposite to what is happening at other facilities within the community. Also, when you look at territorial or regional events, the Arctic Winter Games, for one example, and the major hockey and baseball tournaments that occur and the jamborees, a lot of times that's when we'll see some of our facility use decline or our rentals decline because everybody's out of town attending these regional and territorial events. So what I did is I went back through the last 3 years, 2017 to 2019, to take a look at the use that we had in our different areas of the facility for comparison. So our facility users are a wide range. Generally, almost every facet of the community uses the facility in one way, shape, form, or another. We have a lot of government organizations using the facility as well for, and the types of use vary. As you go down to the different types that I categorized for this, and this is generally what we, most of our rentals fall into these categories. So we have our bereavement feasts. We're seeing an increase in the last couple years with combination rentals in that they'll do the service and the feast in the hall. And that seems to be, I think it's easier to do it that way as opposed to going to the church and then coming for the feast in the hall. So it's worked out fairly well the last few that we've had there. So we just see that it's becoming a thing that people are asking about and doing. Free use includes any use that council has approved for groups to use a facility at no charge. And we do have a considerable amount of that kind of use. Town of Inuvik uses the facility in various ways quite extensively for training, meetings, different programs within the rec department itself, special events that are held, and the Arctic Market and different meetings that tourism hosts and open houses, that type of thing. Then we have miscellaneous community events where the use is not, it's very diverse. It's usually activities that don't involve alcohol fall into this category.
Is that better?
Sorry?
Just pause for 1 second. Alana, is that better?
And I can hear.
Okay. Go ahead, Lise.
Okay. So yeah, community events, this is sort of the catch-all of, sometimes they're one-offs. different youth activities, organizations that have banquets, uh, those types of things. So those are our more community-based events that or community groups coming in, and they can be fundraisers as well that groups are putting on, and those are quite diverse. So we lump those kind of events typically in community events. Court is, we kind of section out on its own because we have quite a few bookings with the courts, and it can be anywhere from territorial court to Supreme Court. We also do video conferencing. Those most video conferences are held or booked by the Yukon and Alberta courts. And just recently, we've started having Justice of the Peace Court, and they, of course, have booked up in the lounge instead of the hall. So it's because it's a smaller type court. We keep weddings separate because council does give a reduced rate for a dry wedding for the rental of community hall. So we like to differentiate between the number of dry weddings that we do have because it is a reduced rate, and then the wet weddings, obviously they're at full rate, but we like to distinguish between the two just to see what the pattern is over the years with that. Conference and trade shows, we have a few that are free. Typically they're historically given or done by from council, being the Great Northern Arts Festival, the Arctic Development Expo, which is a conference of council, and then every second year, the Northwest Territories Association of Communities Conference. Then, and the use for those is separate, put separate, mainly because they do take up a number of days. So it's significant to capture that type of use, because we during those periods, we're not renting out. Most of those take up the full facility, so we're not renting out any of the facility for those periods of time. Conference and trade shows, we do have a few that they do pay. So we have anywhere from 50 to 250 delegates, as well as they range usually from a couple to 5 days in length. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we lost a substantial one that would have been happening in early April, but hopefully they'll rebook for when things get a little bit more back to normal. Training and the next two, training and meetings, those are the two that we find that are they're starting to take over. More and more organizations are coming in and booking the facility rooms for training of all kinds and various meetings. And we've noticed, and I think we'll probably notice over the next little while, kind of an increase in meetings, as far as a lot of staff meetings or department meetings that different organizations have in town. Their boardrooms are not big enough to social distance. So we found an impromptu one came to us today. They phoned this morning, and they were in this afternoon, so for a meeting, because they didn't have the facility large enough to hold their staff meetings. So we're going to start to see that, I think, due to COVID and this, if social distancing keeps in place for some time, I think that we're going to see the bookings come from those meetings that used to be held in boardrooms will now have to come to the facility because there's nowhere else for them to be able to stage them. The next one is dances. We have a few, and we separated this one out mainly because they are dry dances, and they're usually hosted by community organizations for the benefit of, typically they're family dances. So Children's First and the Inuvik Community Event Society are two groups specifically that do these types of events. And because they are kind of a little bit different and kind of no order, I think we do separate them separately. Then we have free licensed events there where alcohol is available, but which no rental fee is charged. And there again, it's typically the town functions or town functions of town council, as well as the town Christmas party. So the Arctic Development Expo and the firefighters ball, which has been put into the donation and sponsorship policy by council as that they waive the rental fees for that event, and the NWTAC conference. So outside of that, then we get to the license use, and all other licensed events there is a full rental fee for, and we have those from weddings to conference or to socials and Christmas parties and whatnot. The facility use by types of events, we find that pre-conferences, conferences, the town of Inuvik, community events, and court are the 5 major uses. However, meetings and training, when you combine those two, they have the most rented use of the facility if you combine the two. Okay, so the next page, I went and I put each area of the facility or the different facility rooms that we book out, and I plotted them against the different types of uses. So you'll see each year separately for each facility area. And as we go down the list, you'll see that the community hall is probably by far the most popular or the most rented of our facilities. And now, if you take a look at the licensed events have actually reduced in the last couple of years. And I think in part it's we are charging, or we do request insurance for all licensed events now, where years past it wasn't something that came into play all the time. That is not, I don't think, the major reason for reduction. I have a feeling it's a lot of work to run an alcohol event. So I just think people are getting worn out. The same people tend to put on the same type of events every year, and they're tired because they're the ones that usually do the special ones, like the St. Patrick's Day dances, the Valentine's dances, those kinds of things. And generally, it's just a handful of people doing a lot of work. So they are, while they can raise some fair funds, they are a lot of work for a few people if that's all you have. So that's what we're seeing, is a little bit of a reduction of licensed events. Okay, if you take a look at the community lounge, and following that on the next page would be the Sundog Room. The trend that we've been seeing in those rentals is a lot of training and meetings. That's starting to pick up for both of those areas. And that seems to be the go-to, I guess, for if people want meetings or training, those are the first 2 places that they'll hit us with. If you take a look after the Sundog Room into the pool lobby, we don't have a lot of use there, but what we're finding is when we have nowhere else, when the inn is full, that people say, well, is the lobby available? And a lot of times you'll see a heavy use from the town of Inuvik. So we do a lot with different courses or whatever, that if we've got some time or pool lobby availability, that's where we will do things. As well as in 2017, the big town of Inuvik, there was a lot of the Arctic markets were put over into the pool lobby that year, because it conflicted, the Saturdays conflicted with use in the hall. So whenever the Arctic market couldn't be put in the hall, it went over into the pool lobby, so we could make use of that space as well. The last few areas, the arena pad, and then I think I follow with the curling pad and the lounge. Primarily, the big use there, and you'll see, is free conference, and that is typically the Great Northern Arts Festival. So that we don't have a lot of arena pad use. You'll see in 2018 that conference, that was the combination of the AET, or sorry, the Arctic Development Expo, and in 2018 there was also the NWTAC. So that's where you see that influx there. And then the conference in 2018, the 9 or 10 days there was the trade show that we had. I don't know what, I'm going to say the wrong truck make, but I don't know if it was GM or I think it was General Motors. But anyways, they came in and they staged all their vehicles on the pad for about a week, because they did stuff up in Tuck and whatnot. So that was that paid rental there. Okay, curling pad, curling lounge. We don't have a lot of use for the curling pad or the curling lounge, but we do get the odd event. And there again, you know, we've had people, like, if the hall is rented and they want a wedding, well, then can we go on the curling pad? So we have had a few of those, but it's not the prime go-to place. If you take a look at the next page, this is the facility use by the type of event, and this is the 3-year combination. So you'll see free conference tops the overall list, and the town of Inuvik. And if you take a look, meeting and training is starting to be the two. If you combine them, they're right up there with the free conference and town of Inuvik use. So that seems to be, you know, and we see more and more meeting and training propositions coming in, or asks. So the next, I took a look at the so the facility use by area. So I broke it out into the community hall, lounge, sundog room. So you see that the biggest use by far is the community hall, then the lounge, and the sundog room is actually, the sundog room is starting to creep past the lounge as far as use goes, because they can do smaller groups, and it's a cheaper room. So I find a lot, it's not as maybe cozy as a lounge, but you know, it's outfitted fairly well, that people are making more use of that room. The next one I have is the fitness center. And I just broke it down. Basically, the membership is through swipe card for a designated period of time, and they get 24/7 access. We have different membership categories, from daily. Those people generally access through the front desk. They don't get a card. Then we have weekly, monthly, 3-month, yearly. We have a small corporate where they take 2 cards. They have 2 cards which are interchangeable. And then we have the corporate flex, which are 5 cards interchangeable amongst as many people as they have. Aurora College, which is the free membership for the students, tied to the end date of their semesters. Town of Inuvik memberships for full-time employees and their dependents, and the firefighter memberships that are free memberships for the firefighters. So if you take a look at the fitness use, it's fairly constant month to month, and I broke it out like through these 3 years, but monthly. And if you take the total yearly visits that are up at the top of the chart, and you divide it out by day, we have on average between 45 and 49 people a day going through the gym, which is a pretty healthy number. Now the squash courts, the next page, squash courts aren't that widely used. Rejuvenation of the squash club over the last couple of years with their putting in regular tournaments certainly has improved the use. It's an area that we have to sit down with the club and see how we can make better use of the area, as well as try to promote it outside of the club membership type side. We do have a few that are a few users that are not, they're not tied so much to the club, but primarily it's heavy club use is what it is. Like most of the people that have memberships are avid within the squash club and attend all the tournaments and the clinics and whatnot. So you don't find a lot of separate use. So it's one area that we could or we should be taking a look at. You'll see through the summer months there again, because it's warmer, the use declines. So hopefully come September we'll be able to in October we'll be able to mitigate a better playing terms for the squash players. Right now they can only do one per court, and it's a tough go because it's not the easiest to play by yourself. So hopefully we'll be able to mitigate better terms with protected WT for that use. The play zone or the treehouse area is generally, we rent it out for birthday parties. We average, and that shouldn't be visits per day. It should, that is the average rentals per month. So make that correction at the top. So that cycles in and out, and there again, that area is probably one that gets hit the most with, depending on other facility uses. If we have a squash tournament, then the treehouse parties kind of conflict with that. It's difficult to run both at the same time because there's so many people in that area, as well as there's a few days a year where we have to shut down the play zone. One time is for I believe just a day and a half or 2 days because of the art development expo. They do their registration in the pool lobby, so it's really difficult to have people walking through with party balloons and whatnot. So we do close it down from time to time depending on what events are happening in the facility. The arena and the swimming pool on the last page. There we don't, over the last few years, we've struggled with differences in how we keep the stats. So I didn't put them together. The pool as well in the last couple of years, we've had one substantial closure and another smaller one. So the stats are a little bit skewed that way. With respect to the ice surface, we're finding that we're getting into a set pattern with the absence of figure skating. The groups pretty much have molded out their times, and there's not a lot of conflict year to year because we have more hours than we have people that want to rent those hours. So one of the things that we have to take a look at is marketing the availability of time. The only hiccup there is that if the time is available at the end of the evening, last minute bookings are difficult because then we're into having to pay overtime for staff. So it's playing that balancing game to make sure that that we can take a later rental if one comes up. We have been in the last couple of years playing with the pool schedule a little bit to try to streamline it and put in, I guess, times that are better suited for people. Staffing levels, there again, play a major role in our ability to streamline too much or further, and sometimes to provide additional swims and programs. But if we get ourselves to a point where we're healthy with staff, then I think that doing more with the pool is certainly an option. Okay, next steps. Following any council questions or any considerations that council would like, I would like to propose that we turn around and do a study of what people would want and what their needs are as far as programs, or certainly not new facilities, but if there's alterations that we can do that makes their renting easier or would be better for them, or times, whatever, get their input. And so I think if staff was to develop a draft survey, I'd like to bring it to the Parks, Recreation, Library Advisory Committee, have them review it and give their input so that we can get it out there and do a survey, not only of groups and users of the facility, but individual users as well. A lot of times I find that that's the voice that sometimes gets lost because they don't have a group to speak for them. They're just speaking individually. So if we can get their input as well, that would be something that we should shoot for, actually. So following that, suggestions that would come from the survey would be put into a report for council to take a look at, and then council could then take a look at providing direction to the department, I guess, in providing for improved facility use and allow for planning and implementation of any new uses of the facility or additional uses. One thing that I didn't get into here, but certainly COVID is going to play a role in the next however long with the facility. And I know that I had spoke to the mayor last week, I believe, and with the schools going back, they are going to be using the gyms from what I understand. So the gym users that were there are going to be out of a place to go. Now, we wouldn't be able to facilitate all the different gym uses because we just don't have the facility that is capable to absorb all that. But there are some that we could probably take a look at. How can we facilitate their coming to us in our facility, for the time being while they're out of the gym, and how we can facilitate and have their programs still continue. That's it.
Great, thank you, Lise. So that is a lot of information to take in, I know. I did have just a couple quick questions. How many days in the year are the hockey ice and the curling ice in?
Depending on when we put the ice in, you're looking at, and no, you're going to have to count days here. We usually have it typically operational for October 1st through to March, say 21st.
Okay. So about 6 months.
Yeah.
5 to 6 months.
Now we have, like, depending there again, and we've certainly worked with the groups in that. Like last year we had the NWTAC conference, so they were going to be off the ice for the better part of a week and a half. So we turned around and we started ice a week early. And then this year, this year was a little bit of a weird year because COVID hit, and where we would have normally gone maybe a week and a half later, we ended up pulling the ice earlier this year than we normally would have. So it's dependent on use. And I know this year was kind of a good thing in that, COVID screwed it up, but the IRC Cup had talked to, the Rec Hockey had talked to IRC Cup organizers and asked them to take their tournament out of February and put it early March, so that that would keep the guys on the ice longer. And then they head off right after that to the White Horse tournament. So it was really tough before for the Rec Hockey League. Once the IRC Cup was said and done, a lot of the hockey guys said, well, I'm not going to Whitehorse, so I'm going to calf and I'm not going anymore. So it made it really difficult for them to continue their season. So with the IRC Cup moving this year, that was, you know, everybody was really happy in that, you know, they would be able to continue, but then COVID hit and that all went down the drain anyway. But yeah, so moving forward, hopefully they'll continue that kind of practice. It's for us too. It gives us more user group use into March.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council on this item? Grant, I don't know if you can take us out of full screen so that I can see the councillors. Thank you. Councillor Barlick?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's an interesting report to read, Lise. I guess I'm happy to see that with looking at the chart with the number of days being used by all the different rooms to see, you know, pretty solid usage by the community hall, community lounge, Sundog. I mean, the community hall in particular is being used about a third of the time throughout the year. I mean, some of those are obviously the free conference days and stuff, but just to know that a big facility like that is available and is being used relatively consistently is nice to see. So I think it's good to see this, to chew on it a little bit. I'll have to probably, like think about what it all means. But I think the idea of developing a survey to put out into the community and to the user groups to look for potential other uses that people may have ideas about or be interested in, I think is a really, I think that'll be a really good thing to see what that looks like with the information coming back. So thanks, it's a good report.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments from council at this time?
Yeah, it's Alana here, if I could, please.
Go ahead, Alana.
That was actually my office that suddenly had to scramble for a meeting this morning. We realized we had more people than we could accommodate. And really, it made me realize that we should probably be marketing that as a place where you could go and have a socially distanced meeting. It worked very well. We had about 12 people upstairs and there was plenty of room. I think it's a real opportunity there because we do have to have a lot of meetings in town and we literally don't have any place to have them other than the rec center.
Great, thank you, Councillor Merrill.
Welcome.
Anything further from council at this time? Not seeing any hands up. All right, thank you, Director Salmir, for your presentation. I'm sure that we'll have many more conversations to come about this item. So with that, we can move on to 8.6, which is the Chief Jim Couey Park projects update. And this will be presented by Director Chalice and Development Officer Joseph. I will hand it over to SAO Hood to do the screen again and over to Director Chalice to lead us through.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yes, I can only see some, so I'm going to assume. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. And thank you, Planning Officer Joseph, who is also on the call, who can assist in answering some questions. So first, I just definitely want to acknowledge him for the work that he does with the tenders, with the contractors, working on the utility work. And there's a lot of background things that happen from that he has been doing, project managing, working on demolition, working with work crews, working on equipment deliveries. And I think there's just so much work that our planning officer does continuously that maybe doesn't get showcased. So I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that he does on this project, on many projects across town. So thank you for that. So I'm really excited to go over today the update of where we're at with Chief Jim Couey Park in terms of the redevelopment. There's two sections, and it's a bit also awkward, just as I'm sure Lise just went through, is that when we're not controlling the PowerPoint, it's a bit strange. So thank you also, Grant, for being our hands there. So if we go to the next slide. Thank you. So there, I also just want to acknowledge there the Chief Jim Cooey Park. That is the sign that is there in the park now. Obviously, as we move on, that sign, I would hope that we look to see where we can create a new sign and make sure that we, take the spirit and nature of where that park was named for. But as we look at the project, let's just look at the overall site plan to start. We can go to the next slide. So just where we're at, looking at the park as a whole, most people that have been through will notice that the original stage has been removed. There's a number of some groundwork that's happening, some site prep. We do hope that this construction and installation of a number of these pieces will start this month. Our goal is to have all of these projects completed by December of this year. And there's still some outstanding things that council and administration need to think about, including what's happening with the existing kiosk that's there that has the mural on the side that is definitely beautiful. And I know a lot of people are excited about that. So the next slide. This is just a rendering of an aerial view, as you can see. As the mayor noted, in terms of the Peggy Curtis Fields, which is what is referred to as there, you can see the soccer pitch and the 2 softball. That is not the project that we're talking about. That is what we refer to administration, town council, as the Peggy Curtis redevelopment. That is what is the GNWT is working on that project. So what we'll be talking about today is just what's happening in the Chief Jim Cooey Park. Which you can see in the aerial view. You can see the new structure that will be the membrane to cover the stage, and you can see the building to the right. And I'm going to talk about each project separately and the elements that are contained within. And just one thing as we go through the entire presentation to know is that some of these items are final, but also some of these are just renderings or examples. So there could still be a room for discussion, or there may be some inaccuracies where, for example, on here, it looks as though you can still drive your car all the way around. That actually will not be the case. Chief Jim Cooey Park, there'll be parking you can see on the Children's First Arctic Food side, and there'll be a few parking spots with the Visitor Center Arctic Market building side, which is the Anglican Church side. But in fact, the road at the back will be pedestrian only. So again, there's just some things that you can't really see on some of these examples, but we will note them. So let's first talk about, oh, go ahead.
Jack, I had a quick question. Just with respect to this overall rendering, is that where the stage is now and the tent are now planning to be positioned? So I think that's a little different than what we had talked about earlier, but just out of curiosity.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know if Planning Officer Joseph wants to talk to that. There's some rationale around what the existing groundwork is under there in terms of the gravel that was already existing under the stage. And to have to from my understanding, to have to redo that work would be cost exorbitant. And so using some of the existing foundation that is already there. And again, also Director Campbell or like Planning Officer Joseph, if they have more to add to why that was changed. Okay, or no.
I could see that Director Campbell's still on the call. I don't see if Planning Officer Joseph is there.
I see his phone.
Okay. So Kessel, you might just have to hit number 6 to unmute yourself. There we go.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, pretty much as Jackie mentioned, there's gravel that's on the site now, and if we move the stage over to the location that we were initially looking at, we would have to transport that gravel over. And then the power that was there for the existing stage, we looked at that as well, and it would have been an added cost to have that moved over to the new location. So in looking at all those factors, we felt it was best to keep it in the location where it's at, and it allows the site and the membrane to form sort of like a middle ground of the site and balance it out with the building while also leaving some open space towards the left side of the site.
Okay, no, thank you for that. I understand things change as the more information is done. So just, yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Thanks. Am I unmuted? Yes. Okay. So we'll first start with the performance pavilion, which is, you can go to the next slide. Thank you, Grant. That's what we refer to as the special events pavilion or the performance pavilion. That is what will be the stages and the bleachers and the covering membrane. So just first a really quick overview about how did we get to this? Why are we doing this? Why are we looking for a covered stage and performance area? The biggest is the predictability in terms of the weather. But also to improve capacity for larger events so we can extend on shoulder season, and also just to create a community space for dancers, concerts, performances, cultural demonstrations, could be weddings, meetings, and again, not having to worry, is it going to rain, or having to change last minute. As we know, even in our previous, whether it was Canada Day or National Indigenous Peoples Day, we've literally stopped the event mid-event because of weather, and this will allow us to not do that, and we can actually have some predictability, which allows for groups to also book. You can, book performances, and you can make plans accordingly. So I think that's the biggest reason. But if we just want to go to the next. So the event pavilion is funded both through the capital budget that was approved by council, but also through funding from Canada Heritage. The final design has been approved. There's 4 major components, and I'll talk about what each of those components are. Again, installation should begin in this month, and we're just waiting on delivery of a few of the pieces yet that are still being manufactured and engineered to ensure that they're ready when they get here. So this is the trailer stage. This is one of the 4 components. The town of Inuvik actually owns a second of these, but this one will be not permanent, but fairly permanent within the membrane structure within the park that will be designated just for park activities so that the other stage can be moved. For example, when the Great Northern Arts Festival is happening, you can have the stage still happening in the arena and also the stage on the outside instead of having to take it down and set it up and move it in different directions. But this trailer stage we've purchased, it's here on site, and it'll be installed when the other pieces are ready. The platform stage also has arrived. It's here in Inuvik. It still needs to be assembled, which we will do under the membrane when it is time. The bleachers, they also have been purchased. We had to do some additional engineering, making sure the ramps are on the right side, and just some additional making sure that there was some other details that I know Kessel had been working with the manufacturers. And we do hope that we'll be here either end of August or early September so that we can install it. One of the things that people are asking is, what's the capacity? So there'll be 3 sets of these bleachers, and each of the sets can hold 90 people. So we're looking at about 270 people in terms of capacity under the tent. And one thing that's really important to note is that they will all have ramps, and they'll also have accessible seating. So we'll have wheelchair seating, but also if you have a stroller, or also just for some other, if you have an ability issue or whatever. So we're quite excited about that. And then, so we have that trailer stage, that platform stage, and the bleachers, and all of that will be encompassed and underneath the cover. and the structure. So there's the structure, and then there's the membrane that goes over the structure. The structure has been purchased. Again, there's some additional engineering, and I don't know if Kessel wants to talk about some of the pieces that are being worked on now, but just around footing, around making sure that what we're putting in the ground is correct because of permafrost, and so that it has wind load. And there's quite a bit of engineering that's gone behind all of these pieces. And it should arrive here and be installed again probably in September. Kessel, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think the engineering side has gone to review, and we just want to make sure that because of the size of the membrane, that we're addressing issues as it relates to snow load and wind load. So the engineers have come back with a design, and we've sent it off to the membrane people, and they'll take a look at it. And once that is settled, then we can proceed with having the foundation installed.
Thank you. So the next slide that you have, I think, if we could go. While this is not exact, we wanted to give, go ahead. Oh. Yes, we just wanted to give a bit of an example of what it would look like being underneath that structure. So you can see you would have that trailer stage at the back, which is where the performances would be, or the musicians or whoever. And then we've got the big platform stage, which could be used for old time dances or northern games, or there's many other uses there. What we also just wanted to sort of demonstrate is there's ability, while you see Town of Inuvik and you see the Muskrat Jamboree, is that if a large event, say the Arts Festival or say the Northern Games, had their own banners and logos and signatures, that in fact there'll be places to put that up so you can really dress to your particular event, or we can have it be Town of Inuvik. But we just sort of wanted to give you a sense of what it would look like inside. And we can go to the next, which is talking about the actual cover and the membrane. So we finalized the artwork, including the language translation that's already been approved. Right now, that as well is being fabricated. And again, we have to wait until that structure was finalized so that we can have the measurements exact. And then it will be installed, and same thing, it will be installed obviously just shortly after the construction of the actual metal structure that it will go over. And there's a next picture. Now, this is just a sample. So in their test yard, in the company that is doing this, they had to put sort of one rung of the structure because they were testing it in terms of putting it up, in terms of testing load. So I just put this in here so that people can sort of see it in real life. Obviously, this is just one section. It will be many sections of this, but it gives you a bit of a scale in terms of height, size, and what we're talking about. But for the actual graphics on the next page, you can see that on each end, it will say Inuvik, and then it will say welcome in Nuvialaktan and in Gwich'in. And then it will have the delta braid around the entire membrane. And the next picture is just, again, it's a sample. You can see it will actually be in color. You can see it will be a little bit different, but again, that was just a rendering of, so people could sort of see what it might look like, you know, actually in the park. And one thing too is you can see, so the structure has the roof, and then yes, so in this next page, again, the trucks in there are to show scale. And also to let you know that that's how the trailer stage is going to get in. So we've had to adjust the height of the membrane so that if we do need to pull a trailer in, you can, but that it's just showing scale. We're not expecting to park semis or anything in the middle of the park. I just wanted to point that out. But during the shoulder seasons and in the winter, this actually becomes fully enclosed. And while it's open there on the bottom, in the winter, it will actually be closed all the way up, and you can see the set of double doors at the back and the set of double doors at the front. And so it will actually be an enclosed structure in the winter time when we put the walls on. So that's what I have for the performance pavilion. And just before I go on to the Arctic Market and the Visitor Center building, did people have questions for either myself or Tessel in regards to the performance pavilion?
Councillor Bartlett, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just another quick question. So the side enclosures, are they going to be the same material as the membrane, or is it going to be like plywood or something like that? Just again, out of curiosity.
It's still the same membrane that goes all the way to the bottom. It'll be, yeah.
Including
the
where
doors. The doors are hard doors.
Okay, that's, yeah. So there'll be one sort of hard section with the doors, and the rest will be the same
That's
sort
right.
of polyethylene or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mayor, are you okay to proceed to the next section? Okay. So the next section, the Arctic Market and the Visitor Center building. Again, I'm very excited for this structure, and people are asking again, how did we get here? As we know, throughout the summers, we love being in Chief Jim Couey Park. This year, because of COVID and also because of the park being closed, the Arctic Market is being held either in the back parking lot of the Midnight Sun complex or within the complex itself. But we can't wait to be back in the park. And by having a permanent structure and by having something again that isn't necessarily weather dependent, it not only improves the capacity to have more vendors on site, but again, despite the weather, we can be there. It also extends shoulder seasons, but this building is also not just for markets. We can't wait to see all the different uses that community groups, other organizations might come up with, as well as renting for special events. I just think that there's a lot of possibilities moving forward, and we're excited about that. So that's one part of the building. The other part so originally there was going to be two buildings. There was going to be a permanent Arctic Market structure, and then there was going to be the visitor center / office. Looking at efficiencies in terms of budget, in terms of scale, in terms of proximity to utilidor and power and all of those things, we have combined the two, and the designers combined the two facilities into one comprehensive building space. So if we just go to the next slide, it talks about, again, why are we doing a visitor center building and why are we doing a tourism office? And we really want to have a place that is open year round, that we can showcase small businesses and tourism operators and local retail, as well as showcasing arts and crafts. We really look forward to working with the GNWT. They do a fantastic job at the current regional visitor center. And we think that we can work with them. We've already talked about, our hours would be later in the evenings when they already close in terms of the times that they're open, but also just being able for us to be open the rest of the year. It's also important from a town perspective to have a place that is visitor centric. And that, as we know, if anyone that has visited the town office, and it's actually quite small in that space. And, even if you have just a few people in there to pay a bill or ask some questions of the land officer, or, to inquire of anyone, that space already becomes quite full. So when you have a tour group or another person in there asking about, which way to travel on the Dempster, or to look at retail, or to try on sweaters, this will allow us to have a very central space And it's also a place for us to be proud of. It's that one place where we want this to be the place year round, that this is the town of Inuvik. And if you're coming to town, this is the place to visit. It will also have a meeting space, workshop that, you know, right now we do culture connection workshops. We do a number of other workshops. So this is also a place not only for ourselves, but other groups to use. And also by having, so the tourism staff, this department, the 3 staff will be moving there permanently. And by having staff year round in the park also allows us to be having activities happen at the same time. And it also allows us to be more efficient with managing our time in one central location. So just a little update in terms of where we are with the building. This building also financed through the capital budget, but this one was also financed through CanNor. In terms of status update, we've received the final design concept, which you'll see shortly. The invitation to tender for the construction, that went out already. Updated construction drawings were provided. So far, I understand there was 16 registered bidders that were interested. We don't know yet until the actual closing date, which will be the 19th, how many officially will submit a bid. But my understanding of that's how many we've had so far. Site prep is beginning to be discussed. And again, I'm going to let like the planning officer, he can speak to some of this better than I. Look about funding. And again, hopefully that this will be completed in December of 2020. Kessel, is there anything that you wanted to update in terms of the tender or in terms of any of the status of getting the site ready for this building that you might want to address?
Not really. Just we've received quite a lot of requests from bidders, both locally, regionally, and a few down south, BC and Alberta. We've also received quite a lot of requests for information from some of the local subcontractors, plumbing and electrical and so forth. So it's a project that it seems a lot of the contractors and the subcontractors are pretty excited about. So we look forward to hearing back and see who's actually going to put in bids when it closes on August the 19th.
Thanks, Kessel. So the first couple slides that we have, these are from like their drawings and site plans, but I think sometimes it's a bit difficult to maybe interpret them. So I'm going to try and do my best to walk through some of them. So the first slide, in the very top left of the screen, you can see it's just sort of zooming out and looking at the park as a whole and the building. So you can see there's a long part that extends alongside of what now is the Anglican Church, goes from Mackenzie Road and then extends alongside. That would be the Arctic Market component of the building. And then there's like a little boot part, and that is the actual visitor center building, tourism building part. So when we're looking at this design, you can see something that has changed, and that's actually quite unique to this, is that if we're looking at the bottom drawing here, and you see, which is a ramp on the far right hand side, and you would go up that ramp and stairs, and then you're on to, or you see there in the middle it says throughway. So that's almost like a tunnel, but it's one level, and it's almost like decking that goes all the way through the end. So it's one uniform space. So the market will be on that space, but this whole building allows us to have, there's place for artwork. I think there's place to have different events. I think, anyways, as we start to get in, we can talk about some of those. And the next is the actual floor plans of the building. So you can see, so there's on the far left-hand side, it's the ground floor plan. Again, just noting that where it says throughway, that's almost like a tunnel. So on the bottom floor, when you walk in, there's a bit of a vestibule. There'll be a public washroom. There's a reception desk, which is much like a, a visitor desk that you would walk, say, a hotel lobby kind of a style of a desk. And there'll be open space where we'll have retail, where we'll be showcasing local arts and crafts. And then there's a meeting room that's at the front of the building that can be used. And something to note, so you can see on the right-hand side, which is the second floor, while the back half, say where it says office to the back wall, is on the second floor, that first section is actually all open to the bottom. So it's not a full second floor. It's almost like a mezzanine or a loft looking down at the bottom. So when you're in that visitor center space, you actually will look up to the second, like it'll be quite large in terms of the roof. And so it's not a full second floor. It's in fact more of a mezzanine or a loft. And in the next slide,
One second. Jackie, I just have a question from Alana.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Miro.
So actually, it's two questions, and I'm looking at the first floor, I'm looking at the public washroom. Is that wheelchair accessible? Doesn't look big enough.
I believe that we said that it did need to be an accessible washroom. I will check on that, and I can check with Kessel, but that is one of the things that we discussed, is that it would need to be an accessible washroom.
Okay, and the offices on the second floor, are they wheelchair accessible? And same question about the bathroom.
No, they are not. The second floor is not wheelchair accessible.
Okay, so we can't hire anybody who's disabled to work on the second floor then?
Or we would make adaptations, perhaps in the reception area desk.
Okay, thank you.
So again, this is looking sort of a bird's eye view. What you see there is part of the Arctic market structure walking. You can see, so starting on the right-hand side and the ramp that goes through the thoroughfare all the way through to the Arctic market side. Or in fact, if you go in that almost like a tunnel, then on the left, you would enter the vestibule and you'd go into the visitor center area and the building. On the next slide, you'll see here's again how it will look. And I just want to talk about a few things here. One is that that color scheme is not the permanent color scheme, but what it does indicate is that it is a paneled outside. Our hope is that that's actually going to be what our discussions right now is, that some of those panels will be colored in blue and green in the town colors. But if you look, the next slide is a different, so this is what our architects that designed the building, this is what they provided us. Our engineers and also some of our other team that helped do some of the other charrettes, this was their, when they were looking at, they're actually putting in the membrane, but they put the building in there so that you could see it. So you could see that's a whole other color scheme, but it would, we could look at whatever color we want, but it is going to be paneled in the way in the previous drawing. Does that make sense? And then if we go to the next drawing or picture, rendering, I don't know what it's called. Yeah, so you can see a close-up here of what I meant by it's a paneling of, and right now they've showed the different, like it's wood. And then there's a close-up, you can see the monument will still be there and the access to the Arctic market will have stairs leading up. And there is a ramp on the end, so that, and there's a ramp on each end of the building to access the building. So for the Arctic market component, Again, this is meant to be an open outside market. This isn't meant to be, you know, fully enclosed, but we do want to have so that we are managing weather through enclosure. And I'll talk about what that looks like in a minute, but that's just sort of the basic diagram of what you can see in some of those other renderings where it's a decking floor, some, you know, backing so that people aren't backing off. And then it's a very simple structure, metal roof. It will have power, it will have lights. And if you go to the next rendering that Taylor Architecture Group did for us. So this is what it would look like walking into that Arctic market underneath that tunnel, and then you walk in and here's how it would look. One of the things that you can see is on either side, you can see samples of that awning that's pulled down. So there's actually mechanical awnings that go around the two sides so that if it is windy or if it's raining, that we can pull all of those down, and they're highly weather resistant, and that they would help reduce the wind and help reduce the weather getting in, but it doesn't make it an enclosed structure, which would mean a lot of things in terms of cost. It would mean a lot of things in terms of the fire marshal. It would mean a lot of different elements. But so it allows us to mitigate weather, but also create a space. But again, if you look at the space, yes, we're looking at it as an Arctic market, but this could be a meeting space. This could be a reception space. This could be, oh, I guess that's the sign. We're moving on to the next next slide. But these are projects that still need to happen in terms of deciding what's going to happen with the community kiosk that's there now. I think there is a lot of opportunity, not just around this building, but throughout the whole park for public art projects and installations. We still need to talk about entry and wayfinding park signage, and Kessel may have some words that he wants to share on that. I think we need to look at doing a Chief Jim Cooey Park sign, and obviously that needs to be done talking with the Gwich'in Tribal Council and asking them what they feel should be done and working on something together. You know, looking at park and lighting. We know that the washroom in the canteen building is something that was part of the original design. It still is our intent to do, although we need money to do that. So hopefully that will come in the next few years. And then the biggest is, you know, the community deciding what kinds of events, what kind of programming do they want to have. And there's endless possibilities, and I'm excited to hear from the community groups on what they feel we could be doing. And then the last slide is just a reminder of some places to receive updates. I will place this update I'll put on the project page. If you go to the town site, there's a project page for the redevelopment. You can always attend council meetings, a Facebook page. You can subscribe and receive updates, or you can always contact staff. And that is all I have. I don't know, Kessel, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No.
All right, thank you very much, Jackie. I'm also excited about what these buildings are going to look like and how the park will be able to be used into the shoulder seasons. Were there any questions or comments from council at this time? Councillor Barlock?
Wouldn't want to disappoint. No, I thought the presentation was good. It actually answered a couple of questions I had earlier, a couple of things I'd missed in the drawings about the second ramp on the other end of the building. I didn't catch that initially. And also the enclosure or partial enclosure awnings. So that's good. I guess the only other thing I would add at this point is with respect to the paneling design on the building, it would be really great if we can figure out a way to incorporate the Town of Inuvik logo into that somewhere on the building, again, just for branding. We should think about that. And then that'll also sort of tie in that color scheme. We're thinking about the blue and the green so people can kind of reference it back to the logo. So that would be the only thing I have to add right now. Looks good. I'm excited.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything further?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
All right, thank you, Councillor Miro. I see a thumbs up from Councillor Wainman.
I just had a quick question.
Councillor Selecki?
Jackie, it looks absolutely fantastic. I think you guys have done a wonderful job. I'm just curious, and maybe you said this, but what's the capacity for the number of vendors inside the Arctic Market building itself?
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute. So we've asked for a space for 25 vendors. Again, with COVID, it's totally different. So when we think non-COVID and when we started this, but we are looking for 25 vendors.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right, if there's nothing further at this time, I'll just say thank you to both Jackie and Kessel for the presentation. I think we're all pretty excited about what's coming. So we can move on to our bylaws. 9.1 will be the 2020 annual tax billing bylaw, which is third and final reading. We will do the reading on Wednesday, but was there any questions or comments on the bylaw this evening? I am seeing none, hearing none. With that, we can move on to our department head reports. 10.1 is the SAO's report. Are there any questions or comments on that report? Again, I'm seeing and hearing none. I should note Councillor Loreen had to depart at about 8:30. So if you're not noticing him on the screen anymore, that's why. We'll move on to 10.2, the capital projects report. Any questions or comments there? I am seeing none. 10.3, the planning and development report. Again, not seeing any hands up. All right. 10.4, the community services report. Councillor Barlock.
Just with respect to, in the report, it talks about some graffiti removal that was done. On my walk the other day, it was the specific graffiti I mentioned to you, your worship, and the SAO had not been removed yet. I think we should deal with that in short order, please. At the skate park.
You cut out for a bit there. It hasn't been removed?
As of 2 nights ago when I was on my walk, it was still there at the skate park. So I think we should get on that pretty quickly.
Okay. I'm sure Director Campbell is adding a note right now.
I will look at it.
All right. So if there's nothing further on the community services report, we'll move on to 10.5, the protective services report. Questions or comments here? We do have Acting SAO Fire Chief Hammond on the line. Seeing none. On to 10.6, the economic development and tourism report. And again, I am seeing and hearing none. All right, thank you. So item 11 is the Aurora Research Institute research notifications, which are basically information items. Some interesting projects going on here in the area. Were there any council concerns under item 12 this evening? Councillor Barlock?
Yeah, I would just mention, I have had a concern mentioned about visibility as you're exiting Carmichael West. There's a bunch of brush on the side of the road that causes limited visibility for oncoming traffic. So maybe Public Works can go have a look at that, maybe brush back some of that shrubs just to help increase visibility.
Yes, I've seen that, and I'm going to be working on getting that removed this week. So
great, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further under council concerns this evening? I am seeing and hearing none. We do not have any in camera tonight, so we will adjourn. And we will come back Wednesday at 7. We'll see you all then. Thank you very much for your time.
Good. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.